All right. So, can you tell me a little about where you grew up and what it was like growing up there?
So I grew up in several places. My dad was military. So the first part of my life, for about the first 8 years, I lived in Germany, on a military base. There were a lot of Americans that lived on my military base, but obviously where I went to school and in the surrounding area, there were a lot of people that were also native Germans. Um, So I think it was a little bit different living outside of the US. Things were not very, they were somewhat centric to the US because we lived on a military base, but little things that I always think of are things like we had one television station, little things like that. So it was just a little bit different. And then we lived on a military base in Maryland for 8 years after that, and then on a military base in Texas. So I think I've never really lived as a child in a civilian area, but I have obviously as an adult, and it is just very different
Hmm.
because there's so much diversity. There's so many people from other parts of the world as well as other parts of the country. So it's just very diverse, just very interesting that way.
Cool. So, how do you think your background has shaped your identity throughout your life?
I think, again, the fact that there are people from so many places and the fact that we traveled so much as a child, it's really helped me to be very open to different cultures and very interested in different cultures just by growing up around that.
Awesome. So, what are some different times that you have felt like you were in the minority of a group or situation, and how have those experiences impacted you? Whether that was growing up or when you had first started living more in the quote unquote real world,
Yeah.
just any situations like that.
Um, I will say, honestly, for me, it's been ethnic diversity,
Hmm.
right? So being a minority, growing up, well, I guess I don't know if it's just ethnic. I was always in gifted classes and frequently was the only or one of two or three Black kids
Hmm.
in school in certain areas. And then also when I went to medical school, even though there were more, we still made up a very small percentage. So I think that's probably um, the area where I felt the most different or most like a minority was in school.
How do you think those experiences helped like you develop, or looking back, like how do you think those kind of influenced your like personality?
So they influence things a lot in many ways. Number one, just who you're friends with and who you grow up around. I do think I think it changes what you hope for, what you strive for, what
Hmm.
you're going to plan to do. It also, because you're one of few, there's a lot of pressure to make sure that what you're doing is always a little bit better so that you're not making everybody else look bad. Somehow you feel like you're responsible for how um, your entire group is perceived. So I think there's a lot of pressure there. Um, but again, I think that there are some positives with that too, because it has helped me to again to be more comfortable in a lot of different environments. So
Awesome. So who are some of the individuals that you admire or consider heroes, and what qualities about them resonate with you?
so that's a little bit difficult to think about as an individual person.
Hmm.
Um, Some I would say, I mean, I think this is a little bit trite, but like my father,
Hmm.
and the big reason for that is just he came from a very poor background, and there were a lot of things that he really wanted to do that he wasn't able to do, um, like go to medical school. He
Hmm.
really wanted to do that. So And I'm sorry, can you read the question to me again? Because I lost my
So
train of thought.
just individuals, or if you have like a group that you admire or consider them heroes, and what qualities about them are like
Mm,
resonate with you, like the biggest things.
right. So the big things with that again is if when there's a hurdle, either kind of working towards it, or if you can't quite get there, persisting to pass it down to the next person to be able to achieve that. So my dad grew up very poor, but managed to go to college, get a master's degree, was very successful from that standpoint, but then instilled in my brother and I how important it was for education and to kind of try really hard to get farther than that.
Mhm.
So I think that's the biggest one for me.
So with his background, obviously had some things that helped impact his life and like the success that he had. And would you say that you have some shared characteristics or challenges that kind of caused you to look up to him, and some stuff, I guess, obviously you said like that kind of passed down?
I mean, again, we moved around a lot.
Hmm.
I wouldn't say that um, like my father grew up very poor. We did not grow up poor, but there were still a lot of things that we weren't quite able to do or to have, and that limited some of the choices, but still being able to persist and kind of move past that. I think that I definitely got that from my dad.
And then last question on an organizational side. So with your job in kind of the medical field, how do you feel organizations can best support diversity and inclusion among their teams?
Yeah, so this is something that I do work with leaders in my organization a lot. And I think the biggest thing is just trying to, again, keep an open mind and understand that people are coming from many different backgrounds rather than expecting people to act a certain way in order to be professional. I
Hmm.
think we run into this a lot, even in just ways people dress, ways people talk. Um, Hairstyles can be really
Hmm.
big in when you're creating um, dress codes, trying to be broader than that and look
Hmm.
outside of your own background, look at other groups and try to make sure that you're being inclusive to allow those or to be flexible with
Hmm.
those. I think that supports diversity. And then also, when possible, trying to put people in positions of authority that do have different
Hmm.
backgrounds. Trying to branch away from our initial thought of what a manager looks like or what a leader looks like,
Hmm.
and then trying to, if you don't have someone who really meets those qualifications, not putting them in a position that they're not qualified for, but trying to create some mentoring and coaching to try to get them there. Because I do think it is very helpful when you see people that come from your similar background in positions of authority and power, because then you feel more like that's possible for you.
Hmm.
So I think that's the biggest thing for diversity is opening your mind to different ways that people can look or be professional and different ways that people can be leaders, but then also taking time to mentor people that don't really have the background or aren't quite there yet, to help them get into positions of leadership as well, because I think that that will improve diversity.
Awesome. Thank you.